Hello and welcome to Module 5 of ProTrain's EVP prep course. In this lecture, we are going to talk about EVP memo question. Memo is one of the areas that provide exam taker most challenge, most anxiety, and most fear on the exam. Why so? Because very seldom in our life we take exam that require us to write memo, isn't it? The memo is in EVP exam is particularly heavily weighted. This is equivalent to probably 25% of oral exam efforts. When the exam was paper based, then there was out of all the four part, one part which was entirely focusing on memo. That's why I suggest that probably it worth around 25% of exam efforts. And we need to do this effort well. So for us, memo is important and it is important that we write the memo well. At the time of writing memo, it is important that you have your thought organized. We are going to go through some of the recommendation both from AC International and from my own experience that I had and from experience of my other fellows and my students that I have gathered and which can be applied at the time of memo exam question. So let's get started. Let's get started with the learning objectives. They are here. The memo is all about communicating EVM and related information in written form. After completing this lecture, you are going to learn number one, what is tested in memo exercise. Number two, how to write the memo. And in that part, we are going to talk about memo format. At the end of the lecture, we will take a sample memo problem and write the answer memo. So first of all, we have to put a proper viewpoint in order to understand the whole game of writing the memo. This means that you must think yourself as a certified earned value professional. We know that you are going to take the exam and you are going to be a certified earned value professional, but at the time of writing memo, you have to assume that you are already certified. And that you advise the project managers and PMO in your organization, and you are the probably most senior and certainly most knowledgeable person in your project about all the aspects of earned value management and how the earned value management is applied in the project, including the requirements of ANSI, EIA 748, and so forth. So the nature of question that you will be presented is a project scenario. You will be given some of the EVM data, perhaps contract performance report or integrated project management report, IPMR, and you are going to look at that data. Some memo problem can be also based on the recommendation on management related issue pertaining to earned value management. Read it, pick it apart, read between line and infer some information, perhaps from some data, perhaps from the already data interpretations made in the memo problem. This is your chance to show off your experience and your competencies about earned value management. So, during the course, we have discussed all other part of the exam. And we have understood that the primary other part of the exam that we discussed, you know, checks your knowledge and addresses your knowledge on materials and your ability to manipulate formula and so forth. But the memo question is different here. Here your experience will be evident from your approach on the memo. You are going to provide some recommended action for the project manager based on given scenarios. This is one of the items that makes EVP exam different from most other professional project management exams such as Project Management Institute, PMP, etc. So, what are the objective stated by AC International for EVP memo. The memo question is probably uh, the memo question. Probably this is the little bit repeat of what we discussed a moment before, but is worth to spend some time and understand the objective from various standpoints so that we have a full clarity of what is expected in the exercise. So the first objective by AAC International for memo question is testing the broad categories of the candidate ability in three broad points, and these are candidate ability to communicate effectively and efficiently with project managers or other executives. That's point number one, right? The point number two is candidate ability to perform analysis and make recommendation with incomplete or conflicting information, right? And the point number three is candidate ability to follow instruction and formatting. So these points are here, right? As I stated, the objective of the memo is for you to communicate effectively with project manager in one page using a specific communication format. And we are going to talk about that format in just a moment. But sadly, one of the reasons people do not do well in the memo is that they don't just follow the direction and instruction given. So my request to you would be that please do follow the specific format which is required for the memo. Please follow it. During the memo, you have to address that a decision is to be made or issue is to be addressed. So you, at the time of writing the memo, you have to stay on the subject. There are going to be potential solution offered to you even in the memo question. You can pick up one of those solution and then justify it with your analysis. Take look at the data, rather EVM data that is provided in the problem. Data will be provided to you in some form or another. You need to relate it in totality and analyze it. Whether you look at analytical way of using SPI or CPI or so forth, or you can analyze in the holistic perspective without going deeper into the calculation of SPI or CPI. Your question to yourself and the challenge is, what does this data make you feel? Whether data is making sense, whatever data represents itself, you need to understand. You want to make sure that you understand it and then you provide a recommendation to the project manager. So you have some potential solution to offer to the project. You have looked the data, now you're going to provide recommendation to the project manager and then close the memo with an offer to provide the project manager with additional information as required. So from going through this memo objective, you should have realized that it is your ability to test knowledge of EMEM, of earned value management, and your understanding of how earned value management applies to the project from your experience, but the also your ability to write well and communicate effectively to project manager, which include just general politeness of writing memos, including summarization and closing with an offer to the project manager to provide additional information if required. So this is like a letter you might write to apply for a job you want to be. The point is that you want to be clear and you want to write well. So this is normally sets the tone for how to write memo. So just as a journal reminder of memos or essay, you might have written some of them in your high school or maybe in college. So here we are going to talk about general approach on writing the memo. So the first point is, which is here, absorb and understand the problem. So you want to make sure that you have read the question, memo question, all the supported material that are provided along with it, and you have understood the material well. If you don't understand at first time, read another time, right? When you have done so, we jump to the second point, that is organize and list your thoughts. Once you have read the material and the data supporting data, then begin to organize your thought and list your thoughts. You know things that you read that you find interesting, right? Or which might be relevant to the essence of the memo or the question written or the question asked during the memo at the end. You should list your thoughts on some scrap paper, which are generally provided in the exam. And once you are done, organize your thoughts. There are probably a logical way to organize, and that is that your thoughts should be organized in such a way that when you write the memo, it creates a flow. We will when we will take the sample memo answer, we will see that how the flow works. Then the next point is, out of your thought list, organize the major points. Because if you run out of time, you certainly want to make sure that you make your major point written in the memo. You don't miss the major point. You may have some minor point which are anecdotal or interesting, and you might, if time enough time is given, you can choose to write it, but make sure that the major points that you want to address in the memo are written in the memo. The next point is that you need to kind of outline the memo. I will show you how to outline the memo and recommendations in AAC in 5 paragraphs in the next section. But remember that you need to outline the memo for better flow. This memo is designed to be one typewritten page or so. So, so you will have enough time provided for that, right? It is important that you need to outline it so that the one page and time is effectively used and you don't run out of that. And by all means, keep track of time so that you do get through all the materials you wanted to get before times runs out, even completing the memo and answering all the questions. Once again, this is computer based exam. We discussed this, yeah? We can't tell you at this point of time in the exam the memo will pop up because the questions are randomized for each examinee. But when you stumble into memo question, that is time to stop anything else and write the memo on first pass of your exam. When I say first pass, means the first go when you do the first go or first time when you do the exam, right? Now, the memo exam is computer based and you will have some form of basic editor and you will be able to write the memo within that framework or in the window to write the memo. When you have done your first draft, now you can go to the balance of the questions and do them, right? But remember, in the pass number 2, you have to come back and write the any remaining questions of the memo, right? You have to come back once you completed all the question and look at the memo again. That would be the second pass. Of course, when you have gone through all the questions of the memo, all the question of the exam, you will have certain better thoughts, right? So that is a good idea that you write some draft at the first, then you complete the questions, and then you come back and write them again, right? In addition to that, there can be a potentially a third pass as well. So what would be third pass? So that you completed all the question, you wrote the memo, and then you have additional time. You know, so you might have gotten some more insight of the thoughts when you come back again and again, and this will be an opportunity for you to correct your grammatical thing, grammatical mistake, spelling mistake, and so on, right? So it doesn't hurt when you have some extra time after completing the third pass, and you can continue to spend the available time in correcting the memo, as we say that it weigh quite high in the exam. So first pass the important message here is that in the first pass you write the memo to the best possible, then you jump it, complete all the remaining questions, and then in the second pass, if you have something left in the memo, you complete it, and during the second pass you can get some additional insight by taking the other questions what are in the exam. And then in the third pass, if you have additional time, you come back again and relook the memo for completeness, for flow, for grammars, and spelling, etc. Let me also highlight that the text editor exam is very basic, and you will not have advanced features such as spelling and grammar correction. Therefore, during the review pass, please do consider giving good attention to spelling and grammar checks as well. If you have time left after completing the exam, this is a 5-hour exam, and normally a lot of students finish the exam before time, go back memo question again and again as I recommended before. A typical memo should contain the section which are highlighted here. These are headings, which includes dates, to, from, and subject. Then we have introduction, then we have body, then we have recommendation, and at last we have conclusion. So using the memo format in the response, what we just discussed will gain you some free points, right? Definitely going to gain you some free points. Additionally, memo format starts with body of memo, not just with example like dear sir or sincerely, right? To include dear sir or sincerely in memo will lose you free points because it is not part of the memo format. Remember it. This is important. Now let's talk about each and every element of or each and every section of the memo in detail. Starting with headlines. A memo headline typically includes date, to, from, and subject. The subject must be meaningful. We all know the frustration of emails or memo when we see them when we see the memos or email with meaningless subjects. A recipient should not have to read the whole memo to have some idea of what this memo or what this mail is all about. The next element is introduction. In introduction, grab the project manager attention in the first sentence. That's the idea. We should also highlight introduction, what is issue at the hand and its importance to the project. This sets the stage for rest of the memo. We should write what is the issue that needs a decision, or what is the issue we are addressing. Provide additional information as required to educate the project manager on the subject area if necessary. Then the next section or part of the memo is body or potential solution. Second paragraph and onwards discusses the potential solution to the problem. There are potential solutions provided in memo exercise as well. If you decide the potential solution provided in the memo problem or the memo exercise is not complete and you have a better solution, then you may add that solution into your memo. However, you still need to address the solution provided in the exercise. Next section is recommendation. Next, a memo should include one or more paragraphs with recommendations that are tied back to the scenario situation and its analysis. Where applicable, recommendations should be supported or backed up by referencing applicable standard if needed. You may use what you learn elsewhere in a study guide or recommended practice or other standards. Optional approaches should be covered as appropriate. If the recommendation made in a memo is imperfect or conflicting, please do address it. Assume that you need to gain audience trust through demonstrating your knowledge on the subject matter of earned value management. And the last section or element of the memo is conclusion. Wrap up the memo with paragraph or two summarizing the recommendations or highlighting those have high priority. There should be an appropriate closing sentence about how to contact the writer for follow-up information, action, or to answer any question if the reader of the memo has it. Please treat this as a general guideline for memo writing, whatever we discussed so far, except the memo format, which is a requirement of date, to, from, subject, and avoidance of salutation and valediction. So here is a recommendation, Preeti, for outline of the memo, right? So let's talk about it. Now, you do not have to follow this as it is, but obviously it is coming from AAC. So you can follow it and you will probably do better because this is what the graders are expecting from you, right? It is ideally a 5-paragraph memo, not longer than 1 page. There are chances that such page guidance you can get in the online editor. Otherwise, you will have just to make some approximation on 1 page. But please, they are looking only for 4, 5, 6 pages. They are not looking for some 4, 5, 6 pages, report or thesis. AC is only expecting from you a 1-page memo. The general format is to introduce the problem, which is presented to you in form of the problem memo statement, right? And you need to make sure that you have understood it properly, right? That's the second point. Now, let's take a general flow how we are going to discuss in the memo. So general flow is like introduce a problem, discuss potential solution, perform analysis, make recommendation based on analysis, and close the memo. So first thing is make sure that you understood the problem, then discuss the potential solution. Some solution may come from the memo question itself, right? You may have some of your own idea. If it is so, perform analysis and make recommendation based on your analysis and close the memo at last. We have already discussed the format of memo. Therefore, do ensure that you stick to the memo format. So let's talk about paragraph 1 and 2. A moment before we talk about it is expected for us to have a 5 paragraph, and the whole memo writing strategy can be divided into 5 paragraphs. So let's talk about first 2 paragraphs. So paragraph 1, right? Paragraph 1. Start with introduction. The first sentence is issue at hand. The first sentence should be talking about issue at hand. The issue that needs decision or need to be addressed. Again, educate the project manager on the subject matter if necessary in the first paragraph. Second paragraph is the potential solution, the background of the potential solution or the start of the potential solution. So how you are going to provide the potential solution, that's a question we have. The problem statement itself can provide you certain potential solution. You may pick the potential solution from the problem statement of the memo itself. But if you have a better solution, there is no reason not to propose it as it is what you have. Add your solution, and obviously if it is better solution, you are going to have to use the data that you have in your analysis in context to explain why your solution is better than any of the solution offered in the memo problem, right? And then of course still address the solution which are provided in the exercise as to why they are not selected and why your solution is superior and why some of those proposed in the memo exercise can lead to unintended consequences. It is worth noting that one of the memo question it is worth noting that one of the memo question can have various scenario-based recommendation. There what I want to highlight that these questions are scenario based, and therefore it is not always possible to have unique and specific answer to a memo question. Therefore, there is always a possibility that the memo question can have a several correct scenario and therefore several correct answer. However, you must understand that whatever scenario you are recommending in the memo, it must be substantiated by logical reasoning, and you should present a solid case to pass the exam. I mean, if you will present the logical reasoning, eventually you will present a solid case to pass the exam. And all such reasoning should either be coming from the data provided in the memo or the information provided in the memo. Okay, now let's talk about paragraph 3, 4, and 5. So, you make your recommendation based on data. We just discussed before. Now, and now here you find that some of the data is imperfect. You find the data are conflicting, and so you want to address this issue, and you want to discount some of the data in making the recommendation and interpretation. So paragraph 3, 4, and 5, somewhere in paragraph 4 primarily, you should address the imperfect data. And additionally, how to structure the paragraph 3, 4, and 5 and how to divide the content in between them, it's kind of up to you. It is still must make a logical sense, and that's why the memo outlining thing we discussed in the earlier part of the lecture remains very important. So your memo got to have some logical sequencing. So paragraph 3, 4, and 5, of course, 5 will summarize the memo, what you discussed and offer to provide, what you discuss in the memo, and that you offer to provide additional information going forward is something you need to address in paragraph number 5. So again, paragraph 3 and 4, 5, what you're going to make? You're going to make some recommendation based on the data you have. Then if the data is not consistent, you have to highlight that. And then in the 5th paragraph, you need to definitely, what you need to do? You need to summarize what you talked about, and then you need to offer additional help to the project manager or person you are writing the memo. Here is a recommended approach that we may use to do so. The first is summarize the project state. So you have EM data, you have a lot of narrative in memo, and perhaps in first paragraph you will get certain information like what is the project state, it is in the beginning, it is in middle, or it is at the end. Does it have undistributed budget? Does it have management reserves? What type of contract this project is? Is it a fixed project or lump sum project, or is a cost plus project? Make sure that you convey the reader that you have looked the bigger picture first, because you are going to make recommendation which will be related to such bigger picture at the latest paragraph of the memo. When the project is at the beginning stage, you would not like to make a recommendation which seems to be coming from the end state of the project. And of course, you can figure out this information, such information from EVM data, right? You can look such information from the CPR report, that what stage of the project it is. Overall recent experience you might have on the data available in the memo question will help you to gauge the overall stage of the project, right? The first paragraph and the data what you get from the memo. The second thing is that discuss the questionable and conflicting data to show about earned value management. You know how to implement earned value management. That's the purpose of challenging the questionable, conflicting, and incomplete data. The fact that you can identify data that is in conflicting or inconsistent state shows that you have ability to look at the data, understand the data in the context of other data, and identify the questionable data. Other point is you might find some errors, inconsistency, and oddities, and the thing that just don't look right. So you want to be able to discuss it and discuss with proper reasoning. And how you would address it? Whether you want to get the data corrected, or you want to ignore the data, or you recommend further analysis to know the truth in this regard, then that is something can be put in certain part of the memo if required. We talked about other part is before as well, but other recommended approaches summarize any detailed project performance. So if you have information at control account level, you want to talk a little bit about control accounts and a specific one, and if there is some account which data is questionable, then you need to look into that and then write that thing in the memo as well. There can be questionable decision that you have, I mean, that you would like to highlight to the control accounts manager of that control account, that you may not be in agreement with the data provider. The other point is carefully infer and underline likely causes of having some such inconsistencies or such issues in the project performance. So and you have to be little careful on that. So when I say careful, you you want to draw a little bit extension from the data and the information provided in the memo to the real world and say it looks like the schedule performance here has been degraded, and it could be due to inadequate staff or inadequate staffing experience. On the failure to understand total project scope in immature technology, whatever it may be, but do put the inferred reason in the context of the project, and you do not want to suggest that one individual is not performing well, or he is incompetent, or some team is confused. Unless unless you have evidence to really make that a specific kind of observation. And other point is make safe assumptions. So make safe assumptions, one that you know from the real world are likely, and then in that context take your recommended actions. Recommend those actions to project managers. Project manager again make safe recommendation. Logical things you may not want to suggest is something like canceling the project. Rather, illogical thing which you don't want to suggest is canceling the project. But present those things which you have examined on a particular work account that it is reported improperly. Highlight the technical challenges that are being shown in the memo question, and so forth and so on. Here is our best recommended approach, that is read the questions and follow direction. The effective communication is at least as important as what you communicate. So write well and make sure it is easily read by others and it is understandable as well. Use complete sentences, right? Use complete sentences. Remember, one sentence that does not make a paragraph, so be careful that you write and you write well. Also, not write long sentences. I want to particularly caution those who come from an engineering background. Engineers are notoriously poor writers. They write oftentimes very lengthy sentences with lot of phrases separated by commas, and pretty soon by the time you come to the end of sentences, you are kind of lost in the sentences in their language, and the sentences does not make sense. So the solution is to use short sentences. Short sentences are more easy to understand by grader, and you certainly don't want to make it difficult for grader to read what you have written. But do follow the instructions. Here is how AAC will evaluate your memo. First of all, memo is read by AAC volunteers. So they are people who already have EVP certifications. So reviewer number 1 gets your electronic version of your memo from test center or from AAC, and that person will look to see if you are definitely pass or definitely fail or maybe pass or maybe fail. And if it's a borderline case, close to passing or failing, then it will go to reviewer number 2, a different person, and that person takes the memo to decide if it is pass or fail because it's right on the borderline. If reviewer 1 and reviewer 2 comes with different conclusion, in other words, if one says you are pass and other says you are fail, it goes to reviewer number 3 and that determines the final outcome. So I think considering that it's a memo and considering that these are read by experienced EVP professional, which is a pretty good way to create such memo and as fair as possible. Now the fact that this memo has to go go to individual for grading, this means that when you have completed the exam at the test center, you're sitting in front of a computer terminal, you click the press, you click the send button of all the question, you are not going to get the result instantaneously, which you might have received in other exam. So once the grader is so this is a different scenario from other exams what you would have taken. So once the grader is done, the information is sent to AC, then you will receive a mail or letter from AC telling that you have passed or not passed. Then they will tell you the areas you have not performed well, so you know where to study harder if you choose to take the exam second time. But don't worry, if you are taking this course, with our experience and your hard work, we will work together to ensure that you get the EVP certification in the first pass. Here is a sample memo on the screen and let me read it for you. You are Ajay Singh and you are Senior Project Controls Manager at ECME Consulting based in head office. Your organization specializes in providing design, program, and project management consultancy services for infrastructure projects. Your company is working on South District Infrastructure Development Program. Mike Johnson is your manager, your program manager. 2 months back, an additional project of riverfront development is awarded under the program umbrella. However, things haven't gone well with the project. Client have rejected integrated baseline review and produced by your organization, citing incomplete and inconsistent review. The project manager is terminated by clients as well. NC's EIS 746 compliance system was needed in RFP, but PM did not quote for but PM did quote only for specialized project control professional, not a certified earned value professional. Noting the tough situation for ECME Consulting in South District Infrastructure Program, both in terms of revenue and reputation, Mike Johnson has reached out to you seeking your support, and you and Mike had a meeting wherein Mike requested for your opinion to find the solution on the issue. Please write a memo to Mike Johnson highlighting how the project should proceed with implementing ANSI EIA 746 standard and highlight the need of deploying a full-time certified earned value professional to the project. So you read the memo, right? It's a pretty straightforward memo. Additionally, the memo is based on a resource deployment situation, a management problem, not based on data. So here we have a recommended approach for it. Let's quickly pick up the recommended approach in form of what we learned in the earlier parts of the lecture, especially fitting for this memo problem. So these are here. Number one, summarize project state. Give your point of view on why such situation may have occurred. Then respond as if you are EVP certified and you have competence and authority to provide professional advice on this management situation. This is a straightforward memo, and you are expected to provide guidance on how to implement ANSI 748 based EVMS system, make recommendation on hiring EVP certified professional, and that's all. Simple and straightforward memo. And such memo you can expect in the EVP exam as well. Now here is the solution on your screen. And let me read it for you. Alternatively, you may pause the video and read the solution from the beginning to the end by yourself as well. Date 30th Jan 2022 to Mike Johnson, Program Manager, from Ajay Singh, Senior Project Controls Manager. Subject ANSI EIA 746 compliant EVMS system at Riverfront Development Project. Note that the subject of the memo is specific and we are using a specific format for this memo. Going forward, we have a first paragraph that is, thanks for meeting earlier this week. We both noted during the meeting that situation at the Riverfront project is something that requires quick remedial action from you as a program manager and me as a project controls head of the organization. RFP of the Riverfront project required that as a program management consultant, implement an ANSI EIA 746 compliant earned value management system. Our experience on previous projects having such EVMS requirements shows that the implementation is resource intensive and requires a specialized and trained certified earned value professional, EVP. I relate the potential issue of incomplete and inconsistent and integrated baseline review to the unavailability of EVP at the project. This means the project should take immediate action to hire competent EVP without any further delay. We have noted that the quote of the project does not consider such professional. However, I would request you to take up this matter with client team and work with a potential solution of creating an appropriate position for an EVP in the project. Meanwhile, let me work with HR team for identification of suitable talent within the organization and if required, outside organization. Until such time we have hired new talent as an interim solution to the current situation, I have requested one of our project controls team member who is currently working on another project to provide support for Riverfront project integrated baseline review. This gentleman has worked in a similar project and has experience in implementing ANSI EIA 746 compliant EVMS, and I am also available to provide any additional support as required. Hope I will provide you ample insight on the current situation and the way forward for resolving it. For any clarification and additional support, please feel free to reach out. Now, that was a memo answer. Now let's see how how we have created this memo answer, or how the author of this memo answer has used whatever we learned in this lecture to write this memo. The first thing is heading. As highlighted, this heading is as per the memo format, which is important. If you don't follow the format, you lose some free point. The second thing is the first paragraph is picking up the background information from the memo, right? So that is something, it is relating that there was a meeting, there were certain issues, and which sets the background of it. Going forward in the paragraph number 2, we are analyzing the problem. We are analyzing the problem as to why the things are not happening the way they should have been. So that's the analysis of the problem. Then in paragraph 3 again, we continue to analyze the problem, and as I have highlighted in the lecture before, how you are going to structure the paragraph from paragraph 1 to 5, it's kind of up to you. However, first paragraph is going to be background, and the last paragraph is going to be a conclusion. So in between that, you may choose to set up the information flow based on the problem as well as based on what essentially and how essentially you want to write a memo, right? So in the third paragraph, we're still going to analyze the problem, but the later part of this paragraph itself, we have started to provide a solution. Then in the fourth paragraph, we are talking about the solution, that the interim solution rather, that a new talent to be hired, and until such time the new talent is available, then there should be a interim arrangement. Having said that, this memo, we may choose to further investigate the matter, that why the interim baseline review may be wrong, if that why without having the certified EVM would have created other complications in the project in terms of not having implemented the proper ANSI EIA 746 compliance standard. So definitely we can still write some more content to the memo, but the idea of presenting this memo is to give you a understanding of how to implement whatever we learned in this lecture. And coming at the last lecture, we continue to conclude it and offer the help. So this is the whole idea how we are going to write the memo. And again, in your exam, the memo can be different. Certain memo can be based on data, but the principles what we talked in this lecture remain the same. So we are now at the end of the lecture. Let's quickly recap what we have learned in this lecture. In this lecture, we have learned that the idea of this memo is to review the candidate ability to communicate effectively and efficiently with a project manager on the topic of earned value management and earned value management system implementation and so on and so forth in one page using a specific communication format, right? So perform analysis and make recommendation with incomplete and conflicting information. That is something is expected in the memo from you. We also understood that to write a successful memo, we should use memo format, provide an analysis of the situation, make recommendation as if you are a certified EVP and have authority to make some recommendation. Any such recommendation must be provided with backing of logical reasoning. Summarize and close the memo with offer to provide the project manager with additional information as required and highlighting his and her action. So that's all we had in this lecture. And have a good time.